What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Samir Sahai Kasser.
And I'm Ryan Kruger.
And today we have an exciting guest for episode 17, Rachit Kataria. Rachit is the co-founder and CEO of Centralize, which is an all-in-one deal workspace for high ACV revenue teams. Prior to Centralize, he was a product tech lead at A2B, a YC company, and built the foundations of their partner-funded discounts and telematic fraud suite. You're going to have to explain what that means because I have no idea
There's
what
a
those
lot.
words are. And then before that, he was a founding engineer at Facebook Shops and helped scale the product to hundreds of millions of monthly active users. He's originally from the Bay Area and received his BS and MS in CS at the University of Southern California. And a fun fact, Ratchet and I both actually went to high school together. So go Vikings, if anyone knows Limbrook
Go
High
Vikings.
in San Jose. So really excited for you to be here today, Ratchet. If there's anything I missed, you want to go ahead and add to your intro there?
No, that's great, man. Appreciate it. I'm very glad to be here. Yeah, it's always good to reconnect with the high school buddies after all these years. It's a small world.
Yeah, it's wild to see where we end up, 10 years later. I feel like I don't think we had caught up in probably 10 years.
We swam together, did water polo at some point, and then life took us in different directions.
Yeah. Yeah, little fun fact. I did haze Ratchet back in the day. I was a senior, he was a freshman, and we did our due diligence to properly invite him to the team. So I guess with that, Centralize is about relationships, and because of our relationship, we were able to actually bring you on today. So you want to tell us a little bit about Centralize and like where it came from, what prompted starting another company, I guess.
Yeah. It's been a fun journey. I mean, maybe I can start even from the relationships that got me to building Centralize. Starting with my co-founder, Will Wing. Him and I actually, we met first week of college at USC, so we've been friends for almost a decade. I got married last year. He was a groomsman. He got married a few months ago. I was his groomsman. We're very close. It's been a long time. And we've always been product engineers by trade. Like, we both did computer science and both very focused on the end customer outcome. We never were the engineers that wanted to just kind of be behind the scenes in the weeds on like the deep algorithm stuff. We wanted to see what the end outcome was. And so kind of fast forward to grad, I had kind of lucked out being a founding engine on Facebook Shops. It was their e-commerce push in COVID. Ton of fun. Got very lucky and was able to kind of build the alpha from scratch with a few folks during May 2020. Stock jumped 5%. I did not make any billions of dollars, but it was an exciting milestone for the company. And within a year, we got to like 250 million monthly users, which is insane. And then I went to a YC company called A2B, fuel cards for trucking. It's like literally like fleet finances. And I would literally go out with AEs and CSMs and the go-to-market team to truck stops and company HQs giving out fuel cards and being like, is this what you need? Like, is this the right thing that we built, the technology? And it was always so cool seeing just like the story on the ground of what does a trucker care about versus the fleet manager versus the CFO of the branch. And each person had different priorities. When you understood them all, it was perfect. Like you actually got the relationship story straight. When you didn't and you lost your champion, they left the company, the new person didn't care anymore, you couldn't get the story around the priorities. As soon as that happens, I've seen deals go from amazing to just disappear overnight. And so that was like a big part of what I got excited about was like, at the end of the day, kind of customer relationships and sales is just about how well do you understand the individual and can speak their language, say the things that matter to them, and then hopefully deliver a product that meets their expectations. That was my side of the story. And then Will, you probably, for everyone listening, has probably actually used more of his products. He actually created the prototyping team at Slack. So he, with Cal, who's the co-founder, CTO of Slack, and Noah Weiss, who's their CPO, he created the first version of Slack Huddles clips, save for later early Slack AI. And at Slack's like horizontal crazy scale, he saw the exact same problem. Nobody in go-to-market was on the same page, could figure out what the person on the other side needed about the product they had to buy, like what they saw the value in. And it was all scattered in just like a bunch of different places and people. And so we kind of came together with this realization that what we like to say is the R in your CRM is broken. And where is the relationship story? Like, it's not just a database of contacts and names. It's like people and what matters to them and who's missing and how do you get there. And what Centralize is all about is basically helping you operationalize that. And we like to say operationalize multi-threading, get to the right personas across the organization, get there fast. I'll pause there, but that's kind of the story of my relationships that led to us building about relationships.
And when you're in a sales cycle, how are you identifying those different relationships? I think this is so important to really get into and explore, because something that I've been able to notice within my career is that the deals that lead to successful outcomes are typically based in the strongest relationships that I and my account executive counterpart will develop with the actual team we're selling into. I can't tell you how many times I've received the feedback the account team was a differentiator for us, right? And that talks about how strong a relationship can be. Even in competitive scenarios, you could sometimes be talking about products A to B that are almost identically the same, hitting on the same value propositions. So, how is one way that you can differentiate? Well, it's actually just by building the strongest relationships. But in your mind, how do you build those strong relationships? How do you identify where they're at?
Yeah, that you should be a head of sales, dude. That was like a very like we think of the exact same way. Like literally, it's hilarious. I was gonna say the exact same kind of framework, which is yeah, the differentiator these days is the art. Is like how well do you come across as the trusted advisor? Like you understand the person on the other side. Everyone wants to feel heard. Wants to feel like you're solving their needs. And what we've done with Centralize is kind of realize with what's possible with AI now is all of that meat of what you need to say to understand someone previously was very unscalable. It was hidden inside maybe a call transcript, like 50 emails, somebody that left the company, they don't even know what they talked about like 2 months ago in CRM somewhere, notes that no one keeps up to date. And we realized that if you could actually bridge all of those silos into a view that gave you the whole story, then you can start basically treating every single person in any deal like they're the only one in your book of business because you actually have the right things to say to each of them. And the way we did that with Centralize was we said, well, the answers are already there. It's in your Gong recordings. It's in your email back and forth. It's in your calendar events. We know who's on those calendars. We know their LinkedIn backstories. We know who on LinkedIn is connected to them. What if you could just take a single pane of glass that could marry your LinkedIn relationships, your CRM data, and your first party conversations, and have a view that automatically fills itself out as you talk to someone of, oh, you just talked to the VP sales. Oh, we just got to the director of IT. Oh, we just got to the IC and marketing. And kind of build out this relationship map that you didn't have to touch. It'll automatically create itself. And on each person, if I clicked on Ryan or if I clicked on Samir, it would literally recap every word you've ever said in the last 8 Gong calls, 10 emails, calendars, and tell me tomorrow when it's not even me, a new AE jumps on, new SE jumps on and has to talk to Ryan. Here's what they say to get him pumped about this product, about what we're building. That is kind of what is now possible because you're taking this like treasure trove of data, putting it into a single view, and being able to use AI to pull out exactly what you would otherwise probably spend 2 hours like digging for to say the right things. Does not replace the person. You still have to deliver that relationship, but can you make it so you can scale that personalized like things to say and to make it to your differentiator, but do it at the scale of every single opportunity in the business, not just like your top 5 account.
I mean, it's hard. Like, what you're describing is extraordinarily difficult. One of my biggest pet peeves is taking notes. We talked about it on our last podcast, Samir. It's
Yeah,
a pain, right? I like to take pen and paper notes, then I have to go and transcribe them into my OneNote, and I'll be
yeah,
jotting down all of those little facts and things that we're talking about on the call. So, we start off where they're from, maybe some of their personal passions outside of work, or things about their families. I remember I was selling into a company one time. A lady was getting a new dog. So then the next time we got on
yeah,
the call, first thing I did is say,
yeah.
"Hey, what was that process like? Walk me through it." And right away, again, strong relationships start to form. She's like, "This person's actually listening to me." But the only way for me to track that is by going through that process, writing the notes, transcribing them, going, rereading the notes, figuring that out. And what happens is 8 calls down the line, you start to forget a lot of those things from call one. That's one deal you're working on. That's one person within one deal. You might have 5 people within it. You might have 20 people within a deal that you're working. Now multiply that by 10 to 20 or 30 different deals you're on. It becomes an impossibility to remember who all those people are and to make sure you hit on those things that actually make you stand out and differentiate.
Yeah, that's what I definitely noticed, like struggling with as you are selling to so many accounts, is keeping those accounts straight. No matter how much you take notes and you are firing off emails, I'm always looking at the CRM. Okay, what was the last correspondent? What did my AE say to them? What did I say to them? What did we
Yeah.
talk about in the last call? if you're lucky to have Gong and Gong recordings, that's helpful. My current company, we don't have Gong. And so it's like, okay, I go to the Zoom recording and maybe do like a control F. And it's like, how much time do I have to actually prep for this? So that stuff always gets buried. I mean, our product has the concept of highlights where you can keep those things top of mind. And I think what you described, Brian, especially with that dog, our example is our champion just adopted a puppy named Bosco. And so I'm going to ask about Bosco at the beginning of the call, see how he's doing. Is he not trained yet? How's that going? Keeping you up at night? Those little 1 to 2 minute things at the beginning and the end of those calls is what really makes a big impact. And so I think it's like, really interesting to leverage AI. And this feels like actually a good use case for AI.
Mm-hmm.
Heard like so many, I want to say not necessarily bad use case, but AI is like overkill for a lot of use cases that people are trying to apply them to. It's like me trying to, use one of those seated lawnmowers for my lawn, which is only like 10 by 10. It's like, I don't need to sit on a seated lawnmower to like mow this lawn. There's like, it's unnecessary. But like I mean, the name makes sense. You're centralizing all the things. Rachit, as right now, I think you're currently pretty much the only sales person on the team, right?
Basically, yeah.
And so as like a founder-led seller, how have you leveraged your platform? How are you eating your own dog food?
Yeah. All the time. I mean, one of the most fun things as an engineer turned kind of founding AE, if you will, whatever I am, but full stack AE, is being able to go into my own centralized instance before a call, seeing exactly who's on the call in the calendar event, shortcuts to all their LinkedIns, where they live, their backstory, the last post that they talked about, what matters to them, if anyone else has talked to them, seeing that, all the past interactions, like that just happens. Like, we just get to use that every single day now, which is a very cool side effect of building this. It's like a very meta use case. Sometimes it's funny, even on calls for customers, I'll be like, hey, before we jump in, normally there's like the back and forth 5 minutes of like, let's do quick intros. Like, who are you? What do you do in the company? I'm like, hey, before we jump in and do intros, can I just take a stab and see if I get it right? And I look at my centralized and I go through all the names, where they live, what they did. They're like, you did a lot of research. And I was like, not really. I took like 5 seconds to put you guys in my platform. And then here we go. They're like, oh shit. So it's a very good, yeah, we use it a lot. It definitely pays dividends in showing them in practice how this can be the difference between like someone who knows what's happening with the relationships and making that clear on a call versus like didn't do the research, got to take an hour to find the same information.
Two things on that. Two things stand out to me. One, it's not the weather that you're talking about in those first 5 minutes. It's actually talking about them. You're getting to know the person on the actual other side of the call. Second piece, let's be transparent. Let's be honest about existing CRM tools as they exist today. Finding that information in there is already difficult. The second thing is you have to rely on people actually entering in the information into the CRM, which we can be honest about and say it doesn't happen all the time. And if it does, it might not be the information that you need. So you go and you look at that record in your CRM, you're walking away wanting more. Okay, we have to schedule a 15-minute call because I have no idea who this person is that we're meeting with. I just have their name and title. I don't have a link to their LinkedIn profile. I don't have anything you talked about on that discovery. So this actually helps get you the insight right away into knowing who they are and avoiding the first 5 minutes of like, where are you from? Oh, okay. Ryan, you're from Chicago. It's got to be cold there, right? Yeah, it's cold. Yeah. That's fine.
You know how it goes, yeah.
And it's just a bunch of BS. None of it helps you sell more effectively. What does help you sell more effectively is connecting to somebody and saying, hey, that dog you bought, Bosco. Tell me a little bit about Bosco. You've had Bosco for a week. How many times has Bosco made in the house? Well, you know what, Ryan? That's been about 10 times. Ice is broken. Now we're starting to get to know the actual person. And here's the thing I find to be most fascinating when you talk about these relationships. When you break that first layer of relationship in a sales call, the person on the other side will start giving you more information than they would otherwise. If you just stay high level and you talk about the weather, you start asking them questions about their business and the way it operates, they're not willing to give you the real metrics and things that actually matter to them. But if you break down that first layer and you can go the next layer and you can break down one more layer and you can go another layer, you'll start getting better information in your sales cycle. And I'll tell you that better information will actually help you sell more effectively. When you ask the question, how long does that take you to do today? they're willing to give you that information. If they don't know it, they might actually go do it for you and say, actually, let me go check with my team. I bet we do have an estimate. It maybe takes us 2 hours. Oh, well, 2 hours goes to 1 minute. Well, if we multiply that by 1,000, hey, this deal sounds like it sells itself. It sounds like free software to me. And so I do encourage everyone that is listening out there, start thinking about the way you're interacting with your prospects and really try to develop a relationship with them outside of just the transactional nature of it.
Yeah.
These people are being sold to all the time. Every day they get LinkedIn messages. They're on a call with you. Don't make it so transactional.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think like the best sellers I've talked to have found ways to just become almost friends within like the first few minutes. It's like what you said. It's if you had to do this manually, going and seeing, do they live in a city that you've ever visited, that you've been to before, that you can almost build the rapport immediately? Like, for example, I was in Chicago for 4 years with my wife when she was there for med school. Anytime someone's even close to Chicago in a prior work experience or history or lives there, yeah, I'm just like, oh, did you go to Westleaf this weekend? Go to Kamiko. It's my favorite bar. It's 10 out of 10 time. You should highly go. Like, take this drink, whatever you want. And they just immediately like, oh, wait a second. This guy like lived 2 minutes away from me like 2 years ago. Wait a second. And you start, it's like the people aspect is so, I think what I found this especially true when you're a startup founder. One like really clear way this has shown up in our day to day is at our stage, right? We're proving ourselves out. It's early days. You're not like this random, rather you are kind of a random name to them initially. You're not this big name company everyone knows, household, like, hey, yeah, I'll buy Gong. Yeah, cool. Everyone knows about Gong. I'll buy them. It's more like what I've found is, if anything, the only differentiator, at least in the beginning, is how deeply you build that first relationship. Because then the team is buying futures on you. They're not buying futures on like, is this going to be the next big company? It's like, are you someone that I would love to work with for the next 6 months? And do I believe you're going to solve my future problems with what you currently have and then get there? If that's true, and that starting point is just you as a person first before you even get to the business side of it, then there's something here. If you can't crack that, unless your product is like insane jaw dropping the second they see it, you're already fighting against this wall of like, I don't know you. Like, why would I trust a small company with anything? So it's like it's almost a non-starter if you don't do that from day one as a founder.
So
Yeah,
what you're saying is there's levels to this stuff. Huh? Like
There's a lot of
the
levels.
earlier
Yeah.
on you are, the harder it gets. So I guess I have a follow-up question to that, right? It's like you're newer on, how are you ultimately pitching your product, right? Like, you're not selling a gong. You're selling something no one's ever heard of before. How does that change? Like, how does your approach change as a salesperson into pitching and getting your way in a company and then ultimately selling the value of the product that you have?
Yeah, yeah. I know Samir, you were about to say something too. Anything to add there?
no, go. Let's go with this. This is more interesting than what I was going to ask.
Yeah, yeah. It's a great question, Ryan. Yeah, I think the stage that we're in and what we have to sell on is it's yeah, you pay for a Gong, you pay for all these other tools, but our significant advantage is like at our stage, at this small stage, you just have to win orthogonally at something really well as a startup. Something that is like we can come to you and trust that you will solve it in a way that with the white glove service that no other big company is ever going to give us, right? They're all out there trying to just they have their product. Like there's no incentive for me to be that voice of change for them unless I'm like Microsoft or something. And like, yeah, I'll give you $10 million to make a feature just for me. For us, the flip side is even though we're like pretty quickly growing and adding to the customer base, every customer is still getting my time of day, checking in one-on-ones with their reps, with AEs, SDRs, frontline managers, leaders, turning literally what they've told us on a Monday into product on Tuesday. That does not happen in really anything outside of the startup land, which is why it's so exciting. It's like a
So
leader doesn't, yeah, a leader doesn't actually care. I think the best leader doesn't actually care that like, oh, I bought outreach, so my problems are solved. It's like, no, I have a problem to solve, and however I get there with the highest chance of it happening, I'm going to invest in that. And if that means like a scrappy team that listens intimately to what I care about and can build it for me ASAP, and my team's happy, why wouldn't I take that bet? I think that's what you lean into, and kind of going back to the first point, the only way you get there is first having a deep relationship where they even trust you to be that person to go and solve those problems in that way. So I have at least learned very quickly, like it's a superpower to be able to do that at this stage where you can't lean on being a Gong that everyone knows about and say, oh yeah, it's of course you're like a successful, useful product. We have to prove it to you. Like deserve, we don't necessarily deserve your trust. We have to earn that trust quickly.
Well, if we even take it like a step before you even like get on the call, in a similar kind of situation where there's no name recognition yet, it's starting to build, like, so that you can't just lean on the name to even get that initial call, like, and you don't have the relationship to lean on to continue. Like, how do you even break that barrier down in the first place if we even take a step beyond prior to that initial relationship where you can pull up centralized and wow them with what sounds like a magic trick? When you first started, I was like, dude, this is a magic trick.
uh, what's funny is like that is kind of the last piece of the puzzle we built and centralized last month, which was you actually don't even realize, but you probably have like 7, 8, 9 figures of pipeline across your extended networks, like friends of the company, advisors, investors, all of these relationships with people who are already incentivized to be on your side and help. And obviously that's like a limited pool, but it's one that a lot of companies don't leverage, although they attempt to. Like, I'm sure the number of times you guys have sat down and someone on the team is like, hey, I'm trying to break into X company. Does someone know someone that works here? Like, as an exec, do you know the VP here? Do you know the VP there? You go through the entire exec team and hope they take the time to like go check those boxes. It's all over Slack, entirely tedious. But the worst thing is you have to do it because let's do this thought exercise. You're AE, Ryan, you're my VP, Samir, you're the CRO. You guys are both like, all right, we're trying to break into DocuSign tomorrow. Or let's say Glean. We're trying to get into Glean.
Okay.
How are we getting to Glean? If I'm not connected to, let's say, the fact that, wait a second, your advisor actually knows Arvin Jain. They're good buddies. They like worked together at Rubrik back in the day. If I am your AE and I'm not connected to your advisor, I have no clue that that even exists because they're not going to show up as a mutual on LinkedIn. You could be paying for Team Link, you could be paying for SalesNav. Wouldn't matter. I wouldn't even know that that connection is possible. But if you took the initiative to say, you know what if I just consolidate all of my advisor relationships, investor relationships, my first degree friends, connections, friends of the company, my entire team, me as an AE wakes up and says, oh, wait a second. Like, why spend 2 months waiting to get to power, fighting my way through cold emails and calls when I can just go through Samir's advisor and like start with what is a really trusted relationship and then at least have a conversation starting point? We do that a bunch for our own conversations. We're blessed to have a lot of really amazing advisors and investors and people on the cap table. Salesforce is one of our leads. They've been incredibly helpful in getting in front of companies. There's so much goodwill out there in pipe that's actually very warm and waiting for you. And at least I would even say like 50% of our customers have come from someone that they trust. That's like, this is hopefully, Samir, if you agree, like a magic trick that you should look at it, like take a look. It's cool. And then it leads to them being like, oh, you're right. Like, damn, we should use this. So that's actually one of the, I wouldn't say hacks, but like very underutilized channels that people are sitting on that you don't really have a way to do it. And with centralized, I mean, we literally just pull in everyone's LinkedIn connections and then show it to you. Like you just look at Glean and be like, oh, wait a second. Someone on the cap table. Well, maybe like Ryan, you're an advisor. Wait a second. Ryan knows Arvin Jain and AJ Tennant. We should probably chat with Ryan and see if we can get an introduction. Literally that workflow is what we power and centralize.
That's super cool because I can tell you like that is just not something I've seen within my sales career. Now, when we do have those first connections that take place, oh, you know what? Actually, one of our investors knows the CEO over at this company. We're going to do an introduction. They get brought to the table. Those deals are not 2x accelerated. They're like X accelerated on what can happen right away because of what you're saying. There is this level of trust and understanding already. Hey, I had somebody already really trusted to me say I should be looking at your product. I already have a lot of faith in them. So why should I be looking at your product? Well, we do this. Oh, wow. That is actually exactly what I'm looking for. That's why they knew to recommend it. And those things just go a lot quicker. But the challenge is actually identifying those. I can tell you, like, we used to try to comb through those kinds of relationships and they're very, very difficult to find. And as an AE, that's just like a difficult task to do.
Yeah, something that we've actually tackled recently that hopefully helps paint the story is like, to your point, you probably have all of us in this call, like all of us have so many connections on LinkedIn that aren't actually real connections, right? They're like random names and faces. Over the years, saw something cool, click connect, done, right? One thing that we've actually indexed on that we're building right now is we actually have this enrichment layer where we can tell, okay, Ryan, you're at Glean, used to be at this company before, used to go to this school. Oh, all the connections you've uploaded, of all the 3,000, 5,000, 10,000, here are actually the ones where you're at Glean at the same time, or you're at the school at the same time, or there's a reason with a probable cause of like having a relationship that's worth pursuing here. And if you can surface that to filter the noise ahead of time, then the chances that that request you're about to send out is a good one is now almost like 10x better versus like getting, like the worst case scenario is you click a request to some amazing VP that you see someone's connected to, and they're like, I have no clue this person. Which is usually what happens today when you just take a general pass on your LinkedIn. But with AI, you can literally do the diff between time overlaps, the schools, the companies, the like titles and functions they were in, and even have like a scoring on. We'll just absolve ourselves of the blame. It's there's no reason you should reach out with this intro, but like you can. But there's also this person here who literally was at the same company at the same time in the same place for 3 years. It's probably a very good chance that they know each other. Go request that introduction. So there's levels to like how much you can also filter that as well.
That's
Can
awesome.
we can we touch base on something here? I think it sounds amazing. I want to get into like the founder mindset from you right now. Like let's peel the onion back a little bit further. Did you come up with the solution first, or did you identify the problem first? Walk us through like how you identified that this was such a big challenge and said, here is what I want to spend all of my time doing.
Yeah. It's a good question. I mean, the founder journey is very windy. I will say when we applied and got into Y Combinator last year, and we did YC from January through April, we actually started with a bit of an adjacent idea. What we knew was really painful was understanding customer relationships. That was the core. That was always the core of the thesis. Was relationships are scattered. There's so many different data tools and silos where they all live. Like, where's the story? And we had taken a very specifically post-sales angle, actually, back then. It was only pulling in, your touch points across your support tickets and your emails and your back and forth to even Slack channel conversations, and just trying to get a high-level picture of the account. And we thought that would work for a few months, up until around April, May time. And what we realized very quickly was this was through. I think at this point we probably talked to at least 150 or 200 VPs of sales, CROs across a lot of different companies. Like this was inklings of what we'd seen outside in as product engineers working with go-to-market that got us to that idea. And very quickly, what we learned after talking to all of those people in the seat as leaders, AEs, SDRs, SEs, like everyone on the ground, I think the one key learning that's now driving everything we're doing, it is that, well, I'll say two key learnings. One, deals are not won alone or lost alone. There's always an entire team. It's like you as a business have to be on the same page. It's not just post-sales. Like SDR has to be on the same page as AE. AM has to know the story a year later for the upsell. The CSM is building that entire relationship graph throughout the year. That has to be in sync for this to work, right? That's like one very key learning we had. And the second one was that deals are not won at the aggregate account level like we were doing in the beginning, just like summation of conversations. Deals are won at the individual level. I'm not convincing, like the CEO of Brex to get something. Like I'm not convincing like Brex to onboard and use a new tool. I'm getting Pedro, the founder, excited. I'm getting Jason, the head of startups, excited about something. I'm getting like Anshul, the IC on the ground, or like the director of partners. Like each individual is actually on the other side of the table hoping to solve something. And if you can't distill it down to that level, like what we had in the beginning was kind of just like interesting. It was just like, okay, cool. Like there's like general thoughts on why this company is doing what we do, and like we're talking to them. But once we started moving in the direction of, what we have to actually solve for is giving an individual level understanding of an account. Like it's not my deal in aggregate recap of what's going on. It's like, no, Ryan gets really excited about this because he just got a dog and wants more time. Wants more time with his dog. Samir doesn't have any other relationships for his dogs at home. It's fine. Like he actually cares about like moving the stock price $2 more next month. He cares about strategy only. Like only company level priorities. Rachit doesn't care at all. He just like doesn't want to work anymore. So if you can like take work away from him, he's happy. Every single person, if we can give him that story, then you get 10 faces and names and say the right thing, and then you get a deal. And I think that was a really big learning, was like we had the inklings that relationships were important. We quickly realized that at the aggregate, it was useful, but not really what's going to be the game changer. After a bunch of conversations that we're still having every day, the learning was that deals are won at the individual level. And how do we make a place where you can understand that individual level? And then the TLDR of all that was we operationalize multi-threading. That is what we're doing. Get to the right people, say the right things at the right time. Hopefully that was helpful. That was a bit of a rambling recap, but that's what we learned.
That's awesome. You know, kind of adjacent to this, because you come from like a technical background and now you're on the sales side, like how have you seen having that technical knowledge be valuable while you're throughout the sales cycle or having these conversations with folks who you're trying to convince to ultimately spend money with you?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Samir, you'll probably resonate with a lot of this as a fellow engineer moving into the kind of go-to-market space, right? I think we were talking about this earlier, but I think the coolest thing as a founder, especially, it's an engineer turned seller, is if I hear something that I can build in 2 days, I'll just tell them it's there and I can build it. Like there's a lot of when engineering teams and sales teams clash because that's not the case. Probably like a certain phase in our journey where I can do that because I'm the one doing it, the selling, and I can be like, that's like 2 days of work. Yeah, it'll be there by the time the order form's signed. Don't worry about it. It'll be fine. That is kind of a rarity that we're definitely leveraging at our phase. If we hear something we need to build, we know it's valuable, we can kind of pattern match and say that, yeah, that we should build this. All right, it's in the platform. That's a big one. I think the other one too is like a lot of sellers, honestly, these days are very inundated with AI tools, right? It's like endless sea of tooling and go-to-market tech. Like it's too much. And so being able to also kind of be like a voice of what's actually possible with tech and not just what's maybe vaporware is helpful, I think. And like explaining to them where all this is coming from, why it's possible, being like, if they really have any detailed questions in the demo, I'm like, this is exactly what's happening behind the scenes. We're taking every sentence in your Gone call, in your email, and whatever. We're storing it. We're doing a layer on top to figure out the right things that matter to this person. And that's what you see in this box. Going is, in and out when they need it. I think gives RevOps a lot of confidence on where the data is piping in from, where it's going to next. Sales leaders being confident that it's not like hallucinating something, it's coming from our real information. Things that, yeah, you can kind of turn on and off your need to dive in as an engineer. Thankfully, for the most part, I'd like to say pretty intuitive in our platform. Like, you don't have too many questions that are technical. You kind of see it and get it. Like, it's my relationships. That's what they said. That's what they mean. But yeah, those are probably the ways I like to flex the engineering side.
As an engineer turned into sales, are there any, we'll call it like traps or things that you do that you're like, oh, I wish I could do this thing a little bit better?
Well, having not been like traditionally trained in sales, I think I have so much room to become a better seller, like a lot of room to be a better salesperson. But what's kind of funny is, I don't know, I think I've always been very focused on relationships, just in like general. Like I like talking to people, like yapping. It's always a fun time hearing stories. A core philosophy of mine generally is I should leave a conversation making the other person feel happier than when I entered it. And I would like to think that's pretty like translatable to sales in general, or hopefully I'm like a decent salesperson because of that. Because it's kind of the end goal. I just like treat it like a game. Like, how do I leave this call getting this person to smile and like feel good about what I just told them? And part of that is like finding reasons to connect over their dog or where they went to school or whatever it ends up being. Hopefully the ideal part is like our product makes their life better. Like that's the ideal outcome. It's also cool because I don't know if this is directly answering your question, but something I maybe have the privilege of is as like pressed as I am to build a large business and grow it quickly and get customers, I actually don't right now have a quote on my head. I'm not motivated by the dollars. I'm motivated by me as a founder building something people want and enjoy using and care about. If they're not a good fit, I'm not going to like try to make this thing happen, right? And so my motivations are always, can I enter the call truly understanding what they need? Because if I don't, I'm doing my company a disservice as like the person leading the charge on the product vision with my co-founder. And so I think as long as those motivations are aligned, I'm not here to like get customers on board that don't actually see value. That doesn't make me happy as a founder. I'm happy when I like see customers actively using it, not the dollars in our bank account. And so I think that actually like is a very good incentive alignment on making sure we're being the trusted advisor, not just like trying to sell you something for the sake of selling you something.
All right, like your co-founder, you're also a sales engineer. Welcome to the Diary of a Sales Engineer podcast. This is why we brought you on. You are, in fact, a sales engineer. You are the trusted advisor. It is so clear to me that is the case, right? I think it's cool, like, that you can pull yourself out of like having the quota over your head to get that clear insight into saying, can I help them? And if I can't help them, then it probably doesn't make sense to pursue, and I'll find somebody else that does need our specific help. I think that's just like one of those sales skills that's really hard to understand because you always get that external piece of quota attached to it. We have to sell. When we throw in that word have to sell, we start trying to put customers in a box that they don't necessarily fit in, meaning we take on accounts that sometimes aren't the best fit. That's why the sales engineer exists, is to, try to like be the voice of reason and say, hey, here's what our product is and actually does. But still, there will be misaligned expectations, right? And we have to level set on all of those throughout a sales cycle. But I think, like, for you being able to pull that out, it allows you to go and find really amazing customers without putting the wrong person in front of the product. Because especially early stage, like, you don't want people using the product that aren't getting the best use, because you want people happy. You want people to say, hey, I'm willing to take a reference call because this is amazing. It's made my job 10 times better.
Exactly.
And so I just think that's super cool to hear. And yeah, you are in fact a sales engineer, 100%.
I kind of led the witness there.
Yeah.
It makes sense. It makes sense. Now that I think about it, yeah, like literally engineer doing sales engineer seems legit.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this on previous episodes, but like what you just described, as a founder, and what you have to do is a lot of the day to day of an SC. And so, people have asked me, hey, what does a career path of an SE like look like? And I do strongly believe that SEs can make really good founders, because at the end of the day, they care. Hey, is this the right fit for the problem that you're trying to solve? As an SE, I don't have like a quota hanging over my head like an AE does. Yes, we have a quota, we have a number to hit, but it's not like if we miss quota, I'm out of a job, or like my livelihood is dependent on that. And so because of that, now I can think from the customer perspective. So like everything you described is literally like how we function. And so that's why I think SEs would make very strong founders, one day if they decide to pursue something like that. So I'm really glad to hear that my thesis is showing up.
Thesis is strong. It's strong. It's strong. It's funny. Like I always say that our entire team are CSMs who can code, but maybe that is what an SE is. It's like a sales engineer. That is effectively the. Maybe I should just be saying we're all SEs.
Yeah.
Honestly, I do think, like, to a certain degree, the skill set that sales engineering is and does is so impactful because it does all live at the base reality of relationship building. And the best SEs are the best at building relationships, but also being honest in those relationships. You're not going to be able to do that with us. Okay, that's fine. I trust you. That's a great, you know what? I actually recommend you do this. Okay, that sounds great. Right. And I think that's like just such an interesting skill set to have, is being able to take really technical conversations, turn it into business language, build a relationship, have soft skills like a salesperson, but hide the sales skills at times, but flash them at other times. Like, there's so many different nuances to this role of a sales engineer that I do agree with, Samir here. It's like you have a pathway to doing quite literally whatever it is you want. If you want to stay more technical, great, go be more technical. Do you want to go start your own business? Look, Rachit's right here. He's doing it. But whether he knew he was a sales engineer or not, it's happening right now in this very moment. Your career path is totally up to you to determine, because you have so many of these different skills that you can leverage and turn on in different moments.
Yeah, definitely.
I know we've held you for some time, but do you want to have any parting words for the audience before we say goodbye to you?
I mean, I think the core thesis that I'll always say is, like, in a world where you're probably only going to see more and more AI tooling, and like people trying to personalize with AI, use AI to their maximum, like fears about replacing people with AI. I think the pendulum is only going to swing to where the end user and buyer will always crave the relationship. Like, that is the differentiator. If anything, it used to be, it's even more of a differentiator now, because you're like trying to replace relationships with AI, right? And that's not how this works. And so I guess parting words is like, we live our own dog food. I encourage everyone to live that dog food. Like, relationships is how you win in hopefully life and sales and getting more customers and getting a juicy W-2, whatever your motivations are. I'd like to see your outcomes. But I like to say that we are building that true R in your CRM, that revenue collaboration platform that helps you get there. So for any folks that need something like that, obviously I'm not going anywhere. We're around. We'll be here. If you're ever curious what that world looks like, hit me up. I'll happily show you. But in general, yeah, it's just like the thesis of that I would say should be what you bring to the table every day at work, at home, friends, family. I think relationships are pretty important these days, so good to lean into.
I love that.
Samir and I always say, one of the things that bothers us most, we had like a whole 10-minute rant on this, but when you go to a restaurant, you have to do the digital QR codes and then you see people on their phones the entire time. You start
True.
losing the relationship aspect of it all,
Yeah, it's true.
it's at the basis of everything we do, our empowering, impactful relationships. And on that note, I'd say Samir and I appreciate the relationship you had bringing us on or having to come on and chat about this stuff. I mean, it's really, really
Yeah.
amazing. And we thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, happy to be here.
We're looking forward to watching Centralized grow, and we'll definitely link Ratchet's LinkedIn and other info down in the show notes. So appreciate you, Ratchet, and I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. See you.
Yeah. See you. Amazing episode. I also didn't know you were a Viking, so now I do.
I was a Viking. Skull.
Oh man. I mean, amazing episode here today. I think, something that just resonates home with me, the whole thing, right? I am such a big believer in the relationships that you can build are really the biggest differentiator that you can make within a sales motion. AE, SE, anybody involved within the sale. I do think it is just an absolute game changer if you can build a real foundational relationship. And so to hear that he's building a product that's focused on that, I feel like it just like connects with my soul. And I'm like, oh, wow, I love it. It's such a cool idea.
Yeah.
And you don't waste time on the BS, man. Like I hate conversations about the weather when you meet with somebody new, but you might already know some really cool information to be able to just start it off. Like I just appreciate that.
Yeah, I thought it was really awesome. And it also like ties into some of the other things we've talked about. People buy from people. That's all about building that foundational relationship. And like, yes, that's really helpful in the sales cycle, but even when you're starting at a new company and building those foundational relationships with your AEs, with the engineering team, with the product team, with marketing, that all becomes super valuable. And then, it's hard to keep up with relationships. It's like not an easy task to do. So being able to have something that helps you organize these things and services what's most important. Like it's like really clever to leverage LinkedIn and look at these two people actually overlapped at the same company for 3 years. So there's more likelihood of a chance that they actually had a real relationship rather than a lot of my LinkedIn, connections at this point is like, why'd you connect with me? Oh, I like this XYZ meme of yours. And it's like, okay, cool. And that's the extent of the relationship.
Or you do the thing that like, I mean, it doesn't drive me nuts. I would say on like the pet peeve scale, it's like a 2 out of 10, maybe. It's not that bad. But when you're on a call with somebody, you're like, oh, hey, I'm just going to like by chance, like, would you happen to know so-and-so? I saw you guys overlap there. No, I've never heard of so-and-so. Oh, you guys are connected on LinkedIn. But you would know that insight, right? To say like, oh, they overlap for 3 years. They overlap for 1 month. They probably don't know each other. Don't address it. So that was something that I thought was just like a cool one because I would say on the pet peeve scale, 2 out of 10.
Yeah, those insights are just a game changer. It makes me like rethink how I can better leverage my relationships with people or even do a little account research. I feel like as an SC, we don't necessarily do that as much because we're really focused on my, kind of like the technical side and really understanding the business problem and like marrying the technical with the business and kind of our primary focus. But if I have a spare 5 minutes and I learned that these people are from Toronto, I went to a really sick oyster shop in Toronto that's really famous. Like, have you eaten there? Like, and boom. I mean, I actually did that on one of my calls. I was like, oh, you're from Toronto? Like, did you go here? It's like, oh yeah, I really like the oysters. And we talked about oysters for like 5 minutes, like West Coast oysters versus East Coast oysters and like the difference in flavors and whatnot. And then later in the call, when I asked one of those metric questions, like, oh yeah, I can get you that information. I'll have to. They like offer to do a little bit of work.
That's what I was saying, man. That's like the most interesting thing to me is that even if you ask a question they don't have the answer to it, they might willingly offer to go find it for you.
Yeah.
You're not getting that out of sales calls, out of people that don't like you or that you haven't built a relationship with. They're just going to say, like, I don't know. And that will be the end of it all. Right. And so I do think that's just like a really good thing to focus on. People that are out there, like I do think the better you can build a relationship, the more success that you'll have on this. And I want everybody that watches this call, when Ratchet started describing his time when he's like, I lived in Chicago, I noticed that I took a look at myself in the mirror, so to speak, here. And as soon as he was talking about that, because I'm from Chicago, my face and my grin are just like beaming. And I was like, wow, we're talking about relation. This is it. He's hitting on some stuff that resonate with me. And because of that, I'm actually having a body language representation of the way I'm feeling right now towards this. And I could feel myself just liking him so much more. And I was like, oh, wow, this is incredible. Like, this is it. This is what we're talking about live and in real time. So if anybody's interested in just like the natural body response that happens, hopefully like the way it gets clipped and put together, I hope so. I'm going to try to actually like clip this down because I thought it was that interesting today. But that is the difference here. When you talk about real things that matter, when you talk about Bosco the dog, people want to talk about Bosco the dog. They don't necessarily want to always talk about work. And it's okay to spend 5 minutes just talking as people and let that be the thing that's different about you in sales than everybody else. And guess what? Maybe you don't sell to them today, but maybe a year later you ask them for a favor. Hey, do you mind? I'm selling a new product. I would just love to get your feedback on it. Of course. Yeah, I would love to jump on a call. I've actually done that recently and had some really amazing people I've just connected with throughout the years. And it doesn't always have to be transactional. Like it can also just be about genuine relationships and say like, I like you. I like working with you. I just want to catch up. It's been a year and I would love to know what you're doing. And regardless if you want the new thing I'm selling or not, I'd just like to catch up and chat.
Yeah, relationships are, I feel like, more crucial now than ever, especially when the world is filled with more and more technology that is trying to fake it. A lot of the AI spam that we all get it. We all know what we're talking about, where they're trying to personalize it, but the personalization is garbage. Times like that is when you have that genuine relationship built, you go very, very far.
I've tried some outreach personal messages recently just to build out on my skill set. They weren't the best, low response rate. We'll give it that, man. But look, I'm trying. That's all that matters. You got to give it a go, figure out what's working for you. But yeah, I agree. Like you got to figure out how to fundamentally connect to people on a different level. That's not just like, do you want to do this? Or I had somebody send me outreach the other day. Hold on. This got a response out of me, and I thought it was so funny that I actually responded back and said like they'd send an outreach email or a message on LinkedIn. I didn't respond. Then they said yes, no, or kick rocks. And I was like, all right. I was like, fair response, man. Like I do kind of want to tell you to kick rocks, but I was like, I think it's an amazing outreach message. So I did send a message back, and I was like, look, I think that works. Definitely continue with it. I'm just not the person for you, but like it was awesome. So maybe like we'll end there
Yeah.
on like
Yes,
yes, no, or
kick
kick rocks. Sure. See you, everyone.